Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I am delighted to be talking with comics creator Snake. Snakey, thank you for
Hi
jumping
there.
in and joining. Hi, thanks.
Great
Uh,
to see you.
Now, I read that you are a spoken word artist as well as a person that works in comics. Is this true?
Yeah, I go to a lot of open mics and just something I got really into when I was in Melbourne, spit rhymes, make poems, things like that. And just using that skill as well to for the rewards. So this project, the View of the Phoenix Trees, the comic,
Hmm.
will be opening as a Kickstarter in sort of mid-September, and get the usual sort of rewards, different covers, things of that nature, behind the scenes, things like that. But then also, I'm happy to write a spoken word poem, 4 minutes, whatever the person wants me to write about. Give me a subject matter. Give me like 2 weeks to write it, and I'll perform it to you as well. So that's one of the rewards you can get as well.
Awesome,
And
awesome.
and on I think on the platform, there's a video of me doing a piece. We probably don't have enough time for me to do one now for you, but like, I mean, if you want me to, I can. But
Well, sure, by all means, please do.
5 minutes, is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. I've been into comics since I was a kid, before all this Marvel DC bullshit adaptation hit. Forget film and TV moving images, it's all about the unified synergy of words and pictures. A literary super team up, creating fictions to rapture imaginations. Through school uniform, black tie work, I've always had my head between pages, forged with the intelligent craftsmanship of artist, writer, creatives. These 24-page coloured bits of paper have shared space with me through the ages. But there are four landmark reads that bookmark my life in stages. First comic I'd like to mention is the dystopian political page turner Transmetropolitan, with a futuristic Hunter S. Thompson as its main character. I grew up reading this comic, bringing this comic with me, luckily, on hour plus long haul journeys to sit and work as a customer service monkey the other side of the city. Cattle cramped carriages and commuter silences faded into the background, with my imagination spellbound. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink, they're linked to a safe space where my head can think and wait for the darker things on my plate to dissipate. My second selection is a zombie survival saga of The Walking Dead, which swam in my slipstream across two different decades as separate reading events. I began reading this comic when my hopes of a film career got dashed, like the blood on the windshield of a car crash, and on the rebound found work at an obscene bar and grill team whose employment stunk like a scorched earth slaughter regime. A neighbouring graveyard gave me garden harmony to sit and read on my tea break, my back sunk against the bark of a maple tree's trunk. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink. They're linked to a safe space where my head can think and wait for the darker things on my plate to dissipate. The next time I picked up The Walking Dead was a million miles from home, in Melbourne, Australia, on a working holiday visa on my own. I was stuck between the termite crawling walls of a hostel, with new strangers coming and going with the consistency of a brothel. Each room had bodies piled high overhead, so I'd find privacy in pages with the curtains drawn to my bunk bed. Some nights I'd escape on the city's tram lines, comic under my arm, to meet strangers on dates and stay out till dawn's morning would wake. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink. They're linked to a safe space where my head can think and wait for the darker things on my plate to dissipate. The next comic book is the anti superhero commentary known as The Boys, which occupied a large portion of my young adult life, like background noise. I bought the first 2.99 issue on my first week of university, when the leaves dressed in an autumn coloured burgundy. For 7 years each month, this comic kept me company, like the clockwork visits of a separated parent, mindful of custody. Through hangover, through, th- through, eh, through sandpaper breakups on campus halls, and through hangover wake-up calls on shared house kitchen floors. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink. They're linked to a safe space where my head can think and wait for the darker things on my plate to dissipate. My final comic is the fantasy western known as Preacher, whose sunburnt pages encapsulate the perfect story for any reader. I grew up reading this comic on my cousin's acrylic carpet floor after borrowing it from his extensive comic collection drawer, While him and his collective crew would play games of FIFA World Tour, I'd be ignored and left in the corner, a cast out orphan, but delving deep into this comic's allure. And as I grew older, my love for this comic endured. Reading it became an annual ritual of the tallest order. My usual plan is a Christmas read as the snow paints the land, wearing striped fingerless gloves to warm my hands. Because friends and relationships come and go. Comics have never left me in a park on my own. For a lone ranger like me, prone to isolation and necessity, our relationship is a lifelong fixture. I can always curl into a corner with pages between my fingers to be enveloped in a resplendent world of words and pictures. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink. Their panels and pages are synced to the lifeblood coursing through my veins. So we travel in parallel lanes through the pain and mundane of the day-to-day strains and journey forward through future gales, force, winds, and rain until the end of my life's reign.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to share that, and there's a lot there that I connect with. I love poetry, I love verse, I love comics, and the combination of all of those things. So you've just told us about your reading history. You've told us about your major works and influences, all within 5 minutes. Not bad, not bad at all. Very nicely done.
I
Uh,
thought it was I thought it was typical, it was topical.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I wish I could follow up with a spoken word question, but I would have to practice that a lot. I would have to practice a good bit. So tell us about the view of the Phoenix trees and how this story came to be.
Sure, yeah. So my family, half my family is English, but the other half is kind of Vietnamese Chinese. So it's kind of based on my grandparents' life and my mum's life and sort of what I heard growing up as this story. And it
Mhm,
always stuck with me. So my grandfather was Chinese, my grandmother was Vietnamese. Um, he moved to Vietnam. They made a family together there. Then the Vietnam War happened. So they lived through the Vietnam War. Then after that, China and Vietnam had a sort of falling out. Everyone who's Chinese got kicked out of Vietnam, and likewise, vice versa. This included my grandparents, and they were quite rich. They had like a farmhouse, 5-story house, things like that. All that got lost, taken away from them, and basically exiled. And there's sort of it was a sort of a mass exodus, to be honest. These people, these Vietnamese immigrants, were called the Ho people, the boat people, and
mhm,
so parents lived on a boat for about six. They lived on a boat for about 6 months. Then finally, they settled in a camp in Macau for about 2 years, and then before settling in the UK. But it's quite sort of an extensive, expansive story that
mm,
spans quite a lot of decades and generations. So I just clicked one day. I started getting into comics and making comics. I mean, I've always been into comics, but I started making comics sort of round about sort of like COVID time, and I just
mhm.
thought it fit perfectly. That it would be a really interesting creator-owned project with a bit more of a realistic element to it. Obviously, there's fantasy elements as well, which I can go into. But yeah,
Yeah, what was it like to dig through some of the realism there, some of the family history, and pull back some of those memories?
yeah. I mean, it was actually quite good because I'm not really very close with my family. I'm close with my immediate family, mum and dad. But like my extended family is nuts, massive. Like my mum has like 20 siblings. I mean, I obviously cut that down for the comic because you can't do that. There's
Right.
like 5 siblings in my comic, so it's a weird thing as well because you're connecting with historically accurate documents and things like that. I did a lot of reading about this sort of mass exodus from Vietnam, getting a lot of photos from my mom, speaking to other relatives about their experiences, things like that. But then at the same time, these people that I'm writing about, I don't really know them. Like my grandfather didn't speak English. I just remember him sitting in a chair smoking cigarettes all day and playing mahjong. So it's a weird thing where you're coming at it from like using real events, but then fictionalizing, coming up with actual characters and people. They're based on kind of rough sort of uh, stereotypes or kind of ideas of characters, but then
Mhm.
um, infusing them with elements of yourself, elements of people you know, just coming up with general new characters for them. So it was an interesting process, really. Yeah, emergence of like sort of realistic, realistically retelling what's happened, but also while coming up with a new story as well, sort of.
Yeah, nice, nice. And then you mentioned that they're the fantasy elements. So how did you decide on those and how to include those and the influences there?
I I really enjoy two levels. Like I
Hmm.
really enjoy stories that have that kind of multi-level kind of element to them. It just makes the story tapestry thicker, more rich, interesting. Like look at Sandman, Pan's Labyrinth. These are real sort of reference points for me. They've inspired me, and so I just wanted to add something further to the story. Not so the first level is obviously my grandparents and them going through the journey, and that's really realist and biopic, and sort of my artist's artwork reflects that. It's very realist. It's kind of a bit gritty. But then I also wanted to have this further level to it, which included the creation story of Vietnam. And
Hmm.
so my grandparents' tale also mirrors Lochlan Kwai, the Dragon King, and him meeting his fairy princess and them creating a family and going through various fantastical ordeals and trials and tribulations. But while also those trials and tribulations kind of mirroring my grandparents. So you've got sort of two levels, but at the same time as well, the artwork is very different. So this artwork, I got a different artist for that, and it's a lot more stylized, a lot more cinematic. There's big splash panels, like
Hmm.
when we tell that story of the Dragon King story, there's only 3 panels to a page, and there's no sort of there's no panel boxes. It's sort of each image merges into the other, and it's sort of quite more flowing and a very different style because I wanted to differentiate the two stories as well.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that sounds fascinating, and I love that kind of literary approach. As far as the collaboration and the process itself, anything that you'd like to mention there?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I had a job as an office like manager, and I didn't really have to do much, and so I just sat there and just churned out four. It's a 4 issue miniseries. So I churned out four issues of the comic and script, and I had no idea how I was going to finance it. I mean, a one-off is kind of easy; you can save up the money. But when
Mhm.
it's like a series, a limited series, or an ongoing series, or whatever, how do you generate that kind of money and cash? And then so you would ideally go to Kickstarter. I'm not a money man. I've no marketing or business kind of experience. I write, I tell stories. That's all I've done. That's what I'm trained in. That's what I went to school for. Done.
Mhm.
And so I was a bit stuck. There was a period where I went for quite a depressive streak because I was like, I'm never going to get to tell this story, and I just wrote something that I really like and really want to tell. And
Yeah,
then I connected, and I was throwing the idea out there. I did sort of 10 pages as a starter page, and you'll see that on the Kickstarter, the first sort of 10 pages that give you like a flavor of the story. And I was throwing those 10 pages out to different publishers, and Edge Comics got back to me. And so I'm working with a publisher, and it's just really nice to have someone to be being supportive and listening to your ideas and being able to bounce them off. And because you sit in a room for 12 hours or 9 hours or whatever, writing
yeah.
by yourself. So it's just something really lovely that, making my way into comics. It's a really lovely thing to have that partnership actually.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And you've gone from someone who's been very much inspired from the medium. I loved what you were sharing in spoken word about connecting with pages and finding the space in your mind to sort of be amid all the chaos in life. What do you hope readers out there that are experiencing your work take away?
Um, the the connection that is the connection that exists between people, and how you can go through such arduous ordeals and things, but these people are going through it with you. They're there with you. It's kind of about a family unit, but that can be anyone. It could be your friend or whatever. But it's about relationships and how they how they keep you going through any issues, any problems you have, any situations, things like that. It's sort of like an arduous task. Like it's almost like a goal. My grandfather has to get his family to a safe place, and finally, when they settle in the UK, but then there's problems from within the family, from within that wall. People are having problems. Um, his pet, his children are having fallouts and things like that. So it's kind of about how difficult family units are, but
Yeah.
also how supportive they are as well, I guess.
Yeah. Well, um, looking forward to seeing the workout in the world. I hope it's the first of many exploration in comics, many explorations in comics. Well, I should ask, is this your first work in the form?
No, I've got another one coming out sort of next month.
Oh, okay,
It's
great,
it's a
great.
bit more of a, yeah. This is my second one really, but I've got another one coming out called Monsters in Your Head, which is a little bit more different. It's story story, so it doesn't matter what kind of story it is. But it's about a little girl who she's got the worst superpower in the world. Every time she gets scared, every time she thinks of a monster, they appear and they scare the hell out of her,
Ah,
terrify her. She's got PTSD. She's an 8-year-old little girl, but she's got such optimism, but she's absolutely scared out of her mind because these
mm,
monsters are around her. However, her best friend is a hulking giant monster called Giggleberry, and he protects her. And so,
nice.
that's my other one.
Nice. Love it. Love it. Well, if I'm a listener out there and I want to support and find out more, anything about finding either of those books, including, I know that The View of the Phoenix Trees is kickstarting. So, anything about the Kickstarter campaign that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, so I mean, you can find it, go on Kickstarter and just type in The View of the Phoenix Trees and you can subscribe there. And then the Kickstarter will be running from mid-September to mid-October. You can find me on Instagram at Snake87SMW and Facebook as well as my real name, which would be Scott Matthew Watson, if you want to message me there. And yeah, my other comic, it's being released by Blood Moon Comics, so you can find it on there as well. Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, Snake, it's been delightful. I'm glad to chat with you anytime, and thank you for a wonderful and creative talk.
No problem. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.